Hey, what's up YouTube? This is Wade D of Dreamside Productions, and we're here for week 2 of my 2025 Beatober recap. For those just joining in on the series, to keep it short, I did Beatober, which is a 31-day challenge in October where you make a new song every day. Any genre, any instrumentation, has to be at least a minute for it to count. You help raise money for charity in the process, as well as grow a nice community of producers, musicians, and other participants that all help motivate, inspire each other to complete the challenge. It's really dope to see. It might start off with just 100 people doing it, and then by the end, so many people done shared videos that there's thousands of producers doing it. It's really dope. When you get a chance, go on Instagram or wherever and check out the hashtag Beatober, and you can see what I'm talking about. All right, now today I'm going over my second week of productions, and at the end I talk about my favorite one of the week and give you insight on the process, struggles, and techniques that I use to complete that. All right, with that out the way, let's roll week 2 of Beatober.
Yes. Is it random which atoms are connected? Think of your own life. You can't anticipate the moments. It's only when you look backwards that you see how it was all connected.
What does this have to do with chemistry?
Everything. The only constant variable in a chemical reaction is change, the unexpected. Our job here is not to avoid surprise. We can't control it. So there's only one thing left to do. Surrender.
All right, this is the third time I had to do this. Please bear with me if I'm a little frustrated. I'm going to try my best to hide it. All right, we are in Studio One today, and I think this is the first beat I did in Studio One for Beatober of 2025. It's very interesting, my mindset when I'm in Studio One versus when I'm in Machine, because whatever I come up with in that session kind of stays in here somewhere, rather muted, disabled, or something. It's there. So it paints the picture of what I did that day versus when I'm in Machine, I delete any ideas that don't make it, I don't know, to save space or because of how I use it. It's just a different mindset. So we are in the key of E minor, and I know for a fact that I started with the keys. If you do use Studio One or any DAW and you record from a keyboard into it, I always recommend that you record the MIDI as well as the audio. That way you have the MIDI available to transfer to other things. If you need to thicken things up, you have that available to you. So I always do record a MIDI track with it not being assigned to anything and place it with the audio, just so I always have those two things there. Just a little tip is if you use Studio One or whatever, etc. So, like I said, we are in E minor, and let's see, we have C major 9, D6, E minor 7, B minor 7 is kind of the chords that we're rocking with today. All right. I love the sound of these keys. I love the sound of this loop. I was stuck here for a long time in this 16-bar loop world. Whenever I'm stuck for a long time, I then go to the GOATs. I try Splice, I try Arcade, and I did that with both. I did that with both, and Splice, I found these vocal samples. And I can see the idea of me trying to fade these because they're doing too much, but they're not super clean fades, which, you know, is interesting. But as you heard, they never made the full beat. But I knew that I was really vibing with this here and trying to think of some dark, sad R&B situation that I could come up with. So after that, I grabbed my guitar and threw on Guitar Rig and tried layering some sounds. And I think I like the note choice I had on guitar, but I did not like that tone. That tone is very muddy. It gets in the way of the keys and the vocals, which the keys and the vocals are very far from each other, but this guitar tone just kind of muddies up all that middle space. So I opted to not go with that guitar tone. So I went to Splice and found a drum loop to just kind of bat some more ideas around, and came up with, and found this, which changes the vibe, at least for me. Before it was mellow and maybe kind of sad, but with this drum loop, it's kind of hopeful and kind of happy. And that inspired me to pick up my bass and do this bass line. And then I sat with that for a long time and then decided I hated all of it. So we got rid of the bass, we got rid of the drums, we got rid of the vocals, and we're now back to just the keys, right? So I went back to Splice and found a different loop to kind of hopefully work some ideas off of. And I like this idea because it gives so much space. You know, we now have keys, we have some drum elements, and there's still space. It's space for you to do whatever you want. I kind of akin making music to maybe like painting a canvas. Like, we're gonna paint a forest today. I know there's trees in a forest, you know. I know there's sky in the background, but what other elements are going to give this forest painting details, you know? Is there going to be animals? Is there going to be a stream? Enough with the metaphors, but it's kind of how I approach this type of situation. So it's still too empty to really say like it's a full picture. So I'm up here trying to think of some stuff. I went back to my bass that I recorded. And the bass is okay, but I feel like it was too busy. It doesn't sound open and spacey as I was just saying that I enjoyed. So instead of doing a live bass, I went back to my tried and true fundamental on my Mo 8. Just did whole notes to kind of hold down the low end. And just keep it simple. Low end is now held down. Gives me a good foundation. Now we have added maybe mountains to our forest picture. I don't know. Don't hold me to this. Let's stop with the whole forest thing. We're just going to keep going with what we're doing here. All right. But now it's still, there's still some more space to fill out. Like I said, I like the notes of the guitar thing I came up with earlier, but I did not like the tone. So I pulled out my Helix, shopped around a couple tones, and came up with this. Now, it's no longer clashing with the keys. If I was still into the vocals, it's touching. They're touching in the frequency spectrum, but they're not stepping on each other and getting in the way of each other, which is a win. All these things you can hear them without me having to reach for too many EQs and panning things. Like they sit okay by themselves. But like I said, wasn't too happy with the vocals. All right, so we have this situation. We have keys, we have drum elements, we have bass, we have guitar. It still isn't full enough. So I started messing around with other drum elements and came with hi-hat pattern, hi-hat and snare. So the timing is still saying we're at a solid 87, we're not double timing, you're not in like a weird half time. It's just everything is holding it down. It's getting solid. We got some tree trunks in the forest and they're just waiting for the branches and the leaves. I know I said I was gonna stop with the dang forest analogies, but come on, that made sense. That was off the cuff. That works, right? I digress. Okay, so I'm feeling this, and I feel like we're really in a good space where if I wanted to pitch this to a rapper or a singer or a musician, they have a really good foundation where they can add the fine details themselves, right? So since it's Beatober, I was like, well, I can't just have this 16-bar loop. I'd rather have to come into it a certain way or I have to come out of it a certain way. And I found another loop to help me with that, right? So here is like my outro vibe. And I think I was just going to do the outro drums and keys. So all the busyness that happened with, the chorus or main part, we now die down and calm down with where we are now. This is my outro kind of vibe. And I was feeling it. And I think I bumped a button or something like that and ended up playing everything. And it sits nice. That makes those drums sit nice with all those extra little sound effects and things that you can hit. So if I take it out, look at how much space is left. If I put it back, such a dope vibe, such a great find. All these loops really work really well to each other, right? And then ultimately, that was the beat. I'm like, cool, this is now set up. I feel happy with it. I know that I finished this early because I further was like, I can add something else, all right? So since it was for Beatober and I didn't want to just do the 16-bar loop, even though now I have my little exiting drums and I even can just, solo the keys and call that an intro, I still wanted to tell a story, all right? So what I ended up doing was grabbing my guitar, finding a nice solo patch that I like on my Helix, and as the kids say, the rest was history. and it tells a story. It finishes the painting. And, you know, if I don't choose to release this myself, of course I would take that lead guitar off. But like now we're here, we're like, we now know we have a forest painting. Now we have, it's a sunset and there's might be some water and there's stream. Like now we have all those details to kind of make this like a nice finished track. And I was really proud of this one, obviously, as I'm talking about it, but like probably top 5 for my 2025 Beatober for sure. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, that was really it. A little insight into my process, my madness, my quirks, you know, if you want to say that. Appreciate you hanging out with me and seeing me fight the methods of not overproducing. If you are a person that is also victim to overproducing, please leave some tips below and we can help each other out in fighting this epidemic as a team. Once again, my name is Wade D of Dreamslide Productions. You have a good one. Thanks for hanging out with me and keep making music.